Hey guys, welcome back for another video. Tonight I want to talk specifically about all of the new series and new to me authors that I want to start in 2023. So last week I did a video talking about all the standalones that I'm making it my personal goal to read next year. But I don't want you to watch that video and start to think that I'm moving away from series or fantasy in particular. You will notice that this list has quite a bit of historical fiction on it. I am kind of branching out a little bit, but fantasy will always be my home. It'll always be my baby. So I do have some exciting new fantasy planned as well. So let's go ahead and get started with this list because I gotta tell you guys, I'm actually very, very excited at the way my 2023 plans are shaping up. I am making it a point to not be overly planned, not overly schedule myself, but I do have a very good idea of what the beginning of my year is going to look like reading wise the first couple of months, and I think it's going to be so good. I'm really excited. So let's jump right in. This first book was given to me as a gift last year by a viewer and a friend, Roxy. She sent me The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan. And I had several friends that actually read this as an advanced reader copy, or, they were given a free copy of the book or the ebook in exchange for a review. And so I had several friends that kind of hopped on the Richard Swan hype train last year. And it seems like this book got generally very positive reviews and reception. Of course, there's no perfect book. I have heard some people that it wasn't quite right for them, but most of my friends that I really feel like I vibe with their preferences and like we have similar tastes, they really liked this book. So I would like to get to this one sooner rather than later, not only because it's been on my shelf for a while, and anytime someone gives me a gift, I would love to get to it. Like, I don't want you to send me something and just sit there collecting dust. But at the same time, I've had a lot of plans going on. So I would like to get to this one sooner rather than later. Not just because it's been constantly in the back of my head, like, I want to see what the hype is about that. But because the second book is called Tyranny of Faith, I believe. It comes out in early February of 2023. So I don't know that I'll get to this in time to do a release day read of the book 2, but I at least want to join in on the festivities. So I imagine I will get this one read some point in the first, 2 or 3 months of 2023, and I'm really looking forward to it. Something I'm very excited about is I'm holding up my Kindle because it's definitely going to be a Kindle thing to begin with. I am so excited to start Outlander. I have recently, last year or so, read more historical fiction, and I'm really vibing with it. And I know that this is historical fiction. I have seen the first 3 seasons of the show, so I have a pretty good idea of the concept. But I know it's historical fiction, but I also know that there's a pretty heavy romance story in here. And I'm here for it, guys. I do want more romance. I'm not quite ready to just read romance genre books because I still want my fantasy. I still want the historical fiction. I still like my genres, but I want some more romance. I like it. I'm digging it. So if the books are even half as romantic as the shows, I think I will have that box checked. But I've heard nothing but wonderful things about the whole series. I believe there are 9 books out so far. So it is kind of exciting to start something else that's going to be a big undertaking. I don't think I'll probably start it till, maybe summertime or a little later in the year. But I would like to get all 9 books read next year. But if I don't, that's totally okay. I'm mostly just excited to get it started. This series, Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence, has been on my shelf for literally years. I bought this, I'd have to go check my receipts, but I'm almost positive I bought this at the end of 2019. So it has been on my shelf for a very, very long time, and I'm excited to read it. One thing that this book is known for is having a truly epic, memorable first line. So I'm going to read it to you guys because it is really good. And I don't think the first line of a book is any type of a spoiler because it's the first line of a first book. But if that's a problem for you, you can feel free to just fast forward a second. The first line of the prologue reads, "It is important when killing a nun to ensure that you bring an army of sufficient size. For Sister Thorn of the Sweet Mercy Covenant, Leno Taxis brought 200 men." So right away that is hooking you because you're thinking 200 men to kill a nun? I'm so excited to read this. It's a trilogy. There are 3 books. Like I said, I've had them for a very long time. This had a very warm reception in the BookTube fantasy community. And again, everyone I know who has read this has great things to say about it. I don't necessarily anticipate it being like an all-time favorite, but that's okay. Like, I don't need everything I read to be my new favorite book. But I am getting a little tired of reading things that are kind of just okay, or I'm kind of like half in, half out on. I want to really like and be hooked by the stuff I read. So I'm hoping this will be a hit for me, but I'm definitely planning on trying this out at some point next year. Before my Kindle gets too buried, you guys know how I like to hold stuff in my hands, I want to talk about one more series that I imagine I will primarily do, audio and Kindle versus audio and physical, because as you guys can see, my shelves are completely full. I have another bookshelf over here. It is completely full. I have another bookshelf over here. It's not just full, it has stacks all over it. So I am probably in the somewhat near future going to maybe thin out my bookshelves a little bit. Like, not a massive unhaul, but if it's something I've read that I don't think I'll recommend to people or let people borrow, or I just didn't like it and I don't see myself ever rereading it, I might be paring down a little bit, because I fully plan to love Outlander. So if I love it, I'm going to want to own the books. But right now, I do not have room for 9 books. Same goes with this next one, which is Matthew Corbett by Robert McCammon. So I read 2 Robert McCammon books this year. I read Swan Song and Boy's Life, and they were both excellent. Like, excellent books. So I have very high hopes for this Matthew Corbett series. And they are shorter books, I believe. I've seen them at bookstores and stuff, and they don't look huge, but there's a bunch of them. I think there are 8, maybe 7 or 8 out. So luckily, they are very easily to pick up on Kindle because they go on sale a lot. So I've started picking them up and collecting them. So I'm going to be doing Kindle and audio. But if it's something I love, I might make some real estate space for it back here. But yeah, Matthew Corbett. This is a series that I really don't know much about, except that everyone I know, again, a lot of people in our Discord community that have tastes that really sync up with mine, or just tastes that I trust, they are just absolutely loving this Matthew Corbett series. I don't really know much about it. I know that he wears a tricorn hat and that he is not a pirate. That's as much as I know. That's kind of a joke. I do know that other people besides pirates wear tricorn hats. But yeah, these covers just have a vibe, like heavy chains and wooden planks, and it just kind of makes me feel like they're pirate books. But I've been told very explicitly they are not pirate books. So I'm very excited for these not pirate books that all have very cool titles. Speaks the Nightbird, like that's a great title. So I don't really know much of what to expect out of these books, but I do have high expectations for them because the 2 Robert McCammon books I've read so far were so good, and these books just keep getting so much praise by my friends. So I am so excited to read them and maybe, or maybe not, start collecting them as well. Let's talk about a couple duologies. So I love me a good trilogy. Like, it's just so perfect. A beginning, a middle, and an end. I love it. I also like big series, but I'm trying to be pretty choosy about that because, a 10-book series can kind of take over your year if you're not careful. So I am picking out a couple of these duologies that I'm really excited about. The first one I'm excited about, and the first one I plan to read, is going to be, what does he call them? I think just like the Arthurian legend books or something. There's probably like an actual title name. But Giles Christian has written 2 books, Lancelot and Camelot, that are, of course, based around the Arthurian legend. So they're going to be, they're going to lean more historical fiction, but probably with some fantasy elements sprinkled in. This year I read a short story by Giles Christian called Hellmouth, and I thought it was awesome. So I do have very high expectations here because his writing style really clicked with me, and I just wanted more. That short story was 40 pages long, so it wasn't quite enough to really enjoy what I was digging about it. So I'm very excited. I'm going to do one in January, one in February as part of a read along on Mike's Discord. I don't know if there's more books coming or if it's just set as a duology, but right now there are just 2 books out. So I'm very excited about those. Let's talk Guy Gavriel Kay for a second. So I mentioned duologies. The first thing I'm going to read from Guy Gavriel Kay is going to be, what do they call these? The Sarantine Mosaic. So the first one is Sailing to Sarantium, and the second one is Lord of Emperors. So yeah, I love the idea of a duology, 2 little books, just gobble them up real quick. I'm very, very excited to read Guy Gavriel Kay. These will be my introduction to Guy Gavriel Kay. I have spoken with Jake our resident Guy Gavriel Kay fanboy at length about where to start with Guy Gavriel Kay. And he actually has this delightful video that will walk you through his thought process on where to start with one of his very favorite authors. So basically where he leaves you is you can start with Tigana or you can start with these. I mean, you can start anywhere you want, I guess, but this is his professional opinion. And after speaking with him about, these are the pros and cons to starting with Tigana first, these are the pros and cons to starting with the Sarantine Mosaic first, I personally decided to start with these two. So I'm going to be reading these, I'm guessing probably March and April, or actually I'll probably read them back to back. I'll probably read them together in March. I say March because, again, I'm not willing to plan too much. But I was planning on reading these in January, and then I forgot about the Giles Christian read-along, and I really wanted to do that too. So I was like, I will do the Giles Christian in January and February, and then just read these two bad boys back to back in March. So I am so looking forward to not just these books, but getting introduced to Guy Gavriel Kay, because if I like what I've read, then I also have Tigana. So very excited to finally get to Guy Gavriel Kay. This is going to be one of those, I can't believe you haven't read that yet moments. And that's okay. Because I didn't really even know this book was a thing until someone read it recently. And then everyone else in the conversation was like, oh yeah, I read that 100 years ago. It was so good. Everyone in the conversation had already read it and everyone had amazing things to say about it. And that is... Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I haven't read this. So I almost put this in my standalone video, and then I realized that there's a prequel and a follow-up novel. I think there's 3 of them altogether. And I actually have one of them back there. So I'm counting this as a series because I have 2 of the 3 books, and I've heard that all 3 of them are really good, that this one is just the best. And that's okay. As long as they're all good and they don't drastically go down in quality, then I'm totally fine with being on board with reading all 3. But this is another one that I'm just wildly excited to read. It's historical fiction and it is beloved. Even my mom's read this, which I say even my mom, my mom's a reader, so it's not that weird that she's read it, but it is strange that our tastes and preferences cross over. So when even she was just like, what do you mean you haven't read Pillars of the Earth? It's time. It's just definitely time to read this. So again, I don't have a plan for when I'll be reading this, but I imagine it will be, spring, March, April, something like that, because I'm just excited about it and I can't keep putting it off. And the last series on this list today is going to be the Fetch Phillips, what does he call these? Fetch Phillips Archives. So this is a series written by Luke Arnold, and you may or may not be familiar with who that is, but he played John Silver on Black Sails. That was a show on Starz that just absolutely kicks ass. If you've never watched Black Sails, gotta watch it. It's so good. It's seriously so good. Anyway, he was phenomenal on that show. He showed so much range as an actor, and the way he portrayed that character's arc and growth was just so cool. I was very impressed by his performance. So after I finished that up, my friend Medic was like, did you know that he's also an author and he has written fantasy books? And I'm like, come again? So I got to doing some research, and he's also in a band, and I just think it's kind of selfish of him to be so talented and just keep it all to himself. I mean, he's not keeping it to himself. He's sharing it with the world. But triple threat, author, actor, and musician, that's just a lot for one person. Am I right? Anyway, I'm kind of hoping these would be something similar to a Dresden Files type palate cleanser. So we all know that Dresden Files grows to be this phenomenal huge story, but they do have that taste and that feel of being somewhat episodic. You're getting case files with those Dresden Files books. And listen to this, okay? So on the front it says, what do you do when the magic runs out? And on the back it says, welcome to Sunder City. The magic is gone, but the monsters remain. I'm Fetch Phillips, just like it says on the window. So it sounds like he's like a detective or a private eye. There are a few things you should know about me before you hire me. 1, sobriety costs extra. 2, my services are confidential. And 3, I don't work for humans. Like, that's enough of a hook for me. Like, I think that sounds really good and unique. So this first book is called The Last Smile in Cinder City, and I got this from Jane, my Secret Santa name draw this year, in a book exchange we do, so thank you again, Jane. And I'm just really excited to get these started. So these are some of the series that I would say I'm most excited about in the coming year. I foresee wanting to get to them sooner rather than later, so maybe this is what the first half of my year is going to look like. I'm not totally sure. But don't worry. Like, if you're out there and you're like, but I thought we were reading such and such together, or what about this series? Like, I haven't forgotten you, or maybe I have. Like, let's face it, I'm super forgetful. So if you are a friend of mine and I've told you I'm going to read something with you next year, you just got to remind me. Do not take it personally. Like, I literally just forget stuff. I get so excited and I just, boom, squirrel. So here are some other things that I can see myself reading next year, but I just don't know about what it's going to go like, because I am, like I said, I'm really trying to not over plan myself. But I'm going to be reading Matthew Ward. I would hope to read some Ken Liu. I have this Scythe trilogy back there that sounds really good. It was given to me by a friend, recommended by a different friend. I'd love to read more stuff on my shelves that I haven't gotten to. But really, I was looking at it the other day, and I'm getting to a point that I have read more of what's on my shelf than what remains unread. So I am chiseling away at that. More Cornwell. I would like to read more Bernard Cornwell. I really, really liked what I read from him this year. So yeah, there are definitely other series out there that I probably will touch on, start, do read-alongs, but that's why I'm leaving myself a lot of wiggle room this year, is so I can say yes to stuff and not feel like, oh my gosh, what about all these things I've started? I just love the idea of picking up something that's completed, picking up something that only has 3 books or 2 books, and really digesting them quickly like I did this year. That worked out really, really well. But I'm also excited to start some longer series that are going to be projects I get to work on all year long. So I think that about wraps up the standalones and the series that I'm most excited to read next year. But do tune in for my next video where I'm going to go over some channel plans that I have for next year, but I'm also going to talk about my planned rereads, and I'm going to talk about series that are unfinished as of now that I would like to finish next year. So unfinished projects that I'm carrying with me into next year. There's not very many, but I do have a couple loose ends that I'm looking forward to tying up. So thank you guys as always for tuning in, watching the video, and please join me in the comments. So if you're going to read any of these as well, let's sync up, let's match up our schedules, because reading together is always more fun.